How did we make it over? Look back and wonder how we made it over. Tell me how we got over. We had a mighty hard time.
Fellow citizens, I now have the pleasure to present to you Rabbi Prinz.
Rabbi Joachim Prinz stepped to the podium as a Jew who had been expelled from Nazi Germany 25 years earlier. Prinz's journey took him from synagogues in Berlin, where he resisted the Nazi regime, to the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, where he denounced segregation.
When I was the rabbi of the Jewish community in Berlin under the Hitler regime, I learned many things. The most important thing that I learned in my life, and under those tragic circumstances, is that bigotry and hatred are not the most urgent problems. The most urgent, the most disgraceful, the most shameful, and the most tragic problem is silence.
I was born in Burkhardsdorf, a village in the eastern part of Germany. There were 900 people in the village. Somehow I knew that I was a Jew, but not because of any Jewish customs that were observed in the house. We had a Hebrew prayer book, but it was only taken out when there was a thunderstorm. My father was very much the father figure, whom I respected more than I loved, but my mother made up for it. It was she who told me fairy tales, and it was she who embraced me as often as she saw me.
They actually moved to a larger village so that there would be more Jews, and that was his mother's pushing.
Alas, at the age of 36, she died. She gave birth to a child, and she died.
And after that, he started going to services to say Kaddish.
The rabbi went to the ark and took out the Torah scroll. He gave it to me to hold and sit with during the service. It had a beautiful velvet mantle, adorned with the golden letters and symbols, and my cheek touched the velvet. I actually felt that I was sitting with my mother, since the velvet was as soft as her skin.
I finally found my identity. I was a Jew. I was a Jew, belonged to the Jewish people.
Then and there, I determined to become a rabbi. My greatest experience was a relationship with my rabbi, Felix Goldman. Several times a year, he would ask me to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and come to his house. In front of his house was a horse-drawn carriage loaded with packages. The driver took us to the districts of the town where the poor people lived. Almost all of these people were Christians, and Dr. Goldman knew the names of the poorest of the poor. Whenever we stopped in front of a house, he would ask me to place one of the packages in front of it. Then we left. Giving was an expression of love to one's neighbor. It did not matter to him whether the neighbor was Jewish or not, a believer or an atheist. He was a human being. In 1925, I discovered in the Jewish newspaper an advertisement calling for a rabbi in a synagogue in Berlin. I decided to try for the position and was invited to deliver a sermon. When it ended, the whole congregation rose.
I think he became a rabbi out of his Zionism and out of the fact that he wanted to make a change in the world.
In 1926, Joachim Prinz was hired as a rabbi by the Friedens Temple in Berlin. At 24 years old, he was the youngest rabbi in the community.
He was, to us, what nowadays would be a rock star. He was our cultural and religious rock star. You mentioned his name and our little girl's hearts would jump around.
I was a schoolgirl. I was 15 years old at the time, and Joachim was very unconventional. He was full of fun, young. We would go out Saturday night to eat or to a cabaret or to the theater.
Here was this young Joachim Prinz who preached without notes, who was a dramatic character, and who went ice skating with kids. Well, rabbis don't go ice skating with kids, but he did.
He wasn't a particularly devout rabbi, but he was an activist all his life, and I think that the rabbinate was part of that.
In 1931, I delivered a sermon and I said to the Jews that they should watch Hitler because he will someday be the leader of the German people. German Jews were so German that they did not believe that Hitler would last. Why? Because he was a foreigner. I mean, how could a foreigner rule Germany? My family, all of them very patriotic. None of them believed me.
Hitler goes into the streets and factories to ask his country to make him supreme commander.
Once Adolf Hitler was elected Chancellor of Germany in 1933, anti-Semitism became the law of the land. Jews were increasingly segregated in public life. They were expelled from universities and from their professions.
Everywhere is a ghetto, and it has a sign. That sign is neighborless.
My father said to me, they no longer look at me, his neighbors, they look through me. I knew them, I grew up with them, my parents grew up with their parents.
The neighbors who would say hello to the Jews in 1932, by 1935, were walking by them as if they had never seen them before. That creates a despair. Prinz fought against that despair. He fought to shore up Jewish self-confidence, Jewish self-respect, Jewish self-esteem. That's what I consider a kind of spiritual resistance.
I preached a sermon against Der Stürmer, the most violent anti-Semitic paper. I took a copy of the paper with me to the pulpit and I said, "Is this what we really look like? Look at yourselves and look at each other. Is this the true picture of the Jews?"
Suddenly, Jews for whom their Jewish identity was hollow found the need to fill in that Jewish identity with real substance. Prinz was able to do that through the lectures that he gave, through the books that he wrote.
Foreseeing the end of Jewish life in Germany, Prinz urged his followers to leave and emigrate to Palestine.
He had founded a youth group at the temple. And I know of some of the people who attended this youth group who eventually went to Palestine.
We were Zionists, and it was that idea of building up a country and being free and doing physical work that changed our attitude from being cowed and afraid and feeling inferior.
There are thousands of people who left Germany at his urging and who owe their lives to his having done that.
In a sermon, I told 3,500 people, it is important to look at the clock and know what time it really is. That time is midnight for the Jewish people, and it is time for us to pack up and go.
Das Zeitalter eines überspitzten jüdischen Intellektualismus ist nun zu Ende. Und der kommende deutsche Mensch wird nicht nur ein Mensch des Buches, sondern auch ein Mensch des Charakters sein.
Things became more and more dangerous. And the Nazis always had somebody at the service, and we knew that, watching what he said. But he was fearless.
We were in the synagogue, and all of a sudden here they were, hoodlums. They raised the clubs, and they were starting to demolish the synagogue. And Dr. Prinz walked down the steps very slowly. And he was not a tall man. And he looked up at them and said, "Gentlemen, is there anything at all that I can do for you?" And they looked at the rabbi standing there. And all of a sudden they lowered the clubs and backed out of the synagogue. I don't know why.
Rabbi Prinz let the government have it and was more than once arrested right from the pulpit in the middle of services.
Repeatedly, Prinz was arrested by the Gestapo.
I don't recall how many times I had to go to the Gestapo. It was always a close call. I often took a small, packed suitcase with me in case I would be detained in prison. The last time I was arrested, there must have been at least 50 heavily armed stormtroopers. Any one of them could shoot and kill me for any wrong move I might make. I walked across, rather gingerly, to be taken to another office where I was again subject to all kinds of interrogations. In spite of all that, I continued my activities. Soon after, the Gestapo called me, forbidding me to preach for a whole month. I then had to find something which could substitute for a sermon. I found it in the prayer book. Thwart the intentions of all those who plot evil against me. When I read the passage in the prayer, I was delivering an anti-Nazi sermon, and everyone knew it.
Prinz's activism had come to the attention of the Nazi Party.
The Gestapo came to inform me officially that I was herewith expelled from Germany, that I should leave the country as soon as possible during the course of the year 1937.
On his last night in Germany, Prinz delivered his final sermon to the Jewish community of Berlin. Thousands of people came to say goodbye.
I was leaving the community as an outspoken advocate of total emigration, as someone who had dared to speak out against the government. I was deeply moved that so many people had come to bid me farewell.
When Prinz had become so persecuted in Germany that he had to leave in order to save his life, it was Stephen Wise who made it possible for him to come to the United States.
A prominent rabbi in New York City, Stephen Wise first met Prinz at a Zionist conference in Switzerland. Wise helped arrange for Prinz to emigrate from Germany with his wife Hilda and their children.
When my father came to the United States, he had no pulpit, so he lectured around the country. I was a young child in those years.
I spoke to Jews and to non-Jews, universities, churches, synagogues. I lectured mainly on Germany under the Hitler regime and Near Eastern politics.
Prinz repeatedly sounded the alarm to American audiences about the dire situation of Jews in Germany. Traveling around the United States, he spoke about the racism he experienced in Germany. Yet Prinz soon witnessed the same racial discrimination against African Americans in his new country.
Naively, I took it for granted that blacks were equal and that, in a democracy, there was no problem of any kind of deprivation and discrimination. One wants so much to believe in the Statue of Liberty.
The awakening happened when he went to deliver a speech to a group in Atlanta, and there was a professor of Bible, a black academic, said, "I'm going to Atlanta. I want to meet this professor." So he went to meet with him at his black university. and then he invited him to come to his hotel in the evening. Meantime, he went to deliver this talk.
I was greeted by the people in charge of the affair. One of them said to me, "I understand that you visited that nigger in the black seminary." I was completely speechless. I responded that it was true that I had invited that great scholar and that I had earlier had a very interesting time with him. But I could not help adding that I was amazed to hear such words from a Jewish group welcoming a Hitler refugee. No one replied.
I could not morally say justice to the Jews unless we also say justice to the blacks. It is indivisible.
His understanding of the black predicament in America must have been informed by his understanding of the Jewish predicament, especially in Germany. And here's how that predicament goes. If you don't stand up to injustice at first dawn, that injustice will overwhelm you.
As long as I can remember, civil rights, and it probably wasn't called civil rights, was a central part of our family and my father's life and work.
I've always thought that his basic love of justice really came out of the fact that he felt everybody should enjoy life. My father really loved life. He loved everything about living. And for people to be subjugated and not be able to have the share of life and enjoyment that he had, he just couldn't stand for that.
In 1938, Prince received a call from Stephen Wise about a congregation in Newark, New Jersey looking for a rabbi. Prince met with members of Temple B'nai Abraham and was hired on the spot.
I told the congregation that I must be assured by them that I would be able to work in complete freedom, be completely independent, and that I would not be involved in a popularity contest, but rather be the leader of the congregation.
B'nai Abraham became a magnificent place where people came to hear him preach. It was a message of, I was in Germany, I saw what could happen when human beings lose their freedom. Let's see what we can do in America to make sure this doesn't happen. And the message in Newark was, the black man deserves better.
In Newark, as in so many northern cities, the white population had started to move out of the city. African Americans moving in faced employment and housing discrimination.
Mrs. Hazelwood, how long have you lived in this neighborhood?
About 4 years.
Have you noticed any change in the neighborhood since you moved in?
Families moving out and other Negro families moving in.
Were the families that moved out white?
Yes, they're all white. They're moving out slowly, but quite a few have already gone, and there's just a few left.
African Americans in the South faced a different type of discrimination. They were barred from voting and segregated by law in schools and public facilities.
The Negro citizens of Montgomery, Alabama, have refrained from riding city buses since December 5th. We, the Negro citizens of Montgomery, Alabama, do now and will continue to carry on our mass protest. All in favor, let it be known by standing on your feet.
Martin Luther King's leadership during the Montgomery bus boycott in 1955 sparked the civil rights movement.
One of the great glories of American democracy is that we have the right to protest for rights. This is a non-violent protest.
A few years later, in 1958, Prince met Martin Luther King for the first time. King delivered an address at the American Jewish Congress Convention when Prince was elected president of the organization.
They had a lot in common. First of all, my father never used notes to give a speech. It was always extemporaneous. And I think he saw in Martin Luther King the same appreciation for the power of the spoken word as a way to influence people.
Many of the indignities that blacks faced and many of the injustices that blacks face unfolded with silence. When both Prince and King are on the scene, that silence was challenged. And the challenge we now know is the modern civil rights movement.
As the new president of the AJC, Prince worked tirelessly to strengthen the Jewish alliance with African American leaders. Their common goal? To press the federal government to use its power to guarantee equality.
Ladies and gentlemen, I do not decry laws, for they are necessary, but I say that laws themselves will never solve problems that must have their roots in the human heart and in the human emotions.
Prince began to write letters to President Eisenhower, urging him to take action.
Dear Mr. President, we respectfully suggest that you call a White House conference on equality to rally the American people in support of the 1954 Supreme Court decision calling for school integration. At stake are the two most precious inheritances of our American democracy: respect for the individual, derived from the great religious principle that all men are the creatures of God, and respect for law.
When synagogues and black churches across the country became the targets of bombings and violence, Prince became even more committed to the civil rights struggle. These events confirm the importance of working with black leaders for equality and justice.
Atlanta has always been a lighthouse of racial and religious tolerance in the South. And we are shocked and amazed that this awful thing could happen in our midst.
After a prominent synagogue in Atlanta was bombed, Prince wrote to President Eisenhower again, linking the anti-Semitic destruction to the problem of racism.
The violence which erupted in Atlanta today emphasizes once again the need for most vigorous action on your part, Mr. President, to mobilize the forces of decency and democracy in our country, which are looking to you for leadership. We urge you, Mr. President, to call a national White House conference.
In addition to writing letters, Prince joined civil rights activists in peaceful protests. They held sit-ins and picketed at segregated restaurants and stores.
We all felt that we were living in a troubled period and troubled land, and that we were being denied certain basic human rights. That what had happened to members of the Jewish community in Germany was evil. And in a real sense, we felt this kinship, we felt this spirit, and we became connected.
Prince and King continually supported one another's efforts.
Dear Dr. King, I was delighted to see that you are backing my request to President Eisenhower to call a White House conference on the problem of the South. I've had 2 letters from him informing me that he would take it into serious consideration, but no action has followed.
You can turn your back now and you can keep the club in your hand, but you cannot beat down justice. And we will register to vote because as citizens of these United States, we have the right to do it. The power structure downtown will have to say, we can't stop this movement, and the only way to deal with it is to give these people what we owe them and what their God-given rights and their constitutional rights demand.
As the nonviolent protest movement led by Martin Luther King gained momentum, the movement was met with violence. King was repeatedly harassed and arrested. While he was imprisoned in Georgia, Prince sent him a letter of support.
Reverend Martin Luther King, Albany County Jail, Georgia. Your valiant fight against injustice and for constitutional rights is in the great tradition of the religious leaders of past centuries. The members of the American Jewish Congress salute you and your colleagues in the Albany movement and promise their support for your ultimate victory. Rabbi Joachim Prinz.
Rabbi Prince understood, as a Jew, the layered frustration and bitterness of people permanently kept at the bottom. Keep in mind that the Holocaust had happened when King and Rabbi Prince intersected each other's lives.
He spoke out of his history. He used his experience to speak up and speak out. He wrote letters.
My dear Governor Folsom, we respectfully urge you to investigate the unlawful intimidation of Negro clergymen.
He sent telegrams.
We believe that the oppressive actions of the Birmingham police violated.
He signed petitions.
We urge all Americans who believe.
He did what I call over and over again. He got in the way. He got in trouble, good trouble, necessary trouble, to help awaken a sleeping America.
While at the forefront of the civil rights struggle on the national stage, Prince continued to serve as rabbi of Temple B'nai Abraham in Newark until he retired in 1977.
I wish that people of today could see our synagogue in Newark, how it was filled up on a Friday night service, because they felt that Dr. Prinz was going to talk to them about something that they would learn and know about. And so we did learn a lot. Yes, we did.
Last night's sermon was a rather difficult one, and I do understand that there are many people in this congregation who had trouble with that kind of a concept, which I believe is the authentic Jewish concept of God.
Prinz, as far as I know, faced a lot of people in his own congregation who were not real happy with a lot of the stuff he said, but he got away with it, I think, because first of all, he was an excellent congregational rabbi, and so he did his day job, so to speak, most effectively, and secondly, he was held in such high regard and was so good at his public persona that even people who might not have felt, who might not have agreed with him much of the time, were proud to have him as their rabbi.
He had that remarkable combination of such wisdom, such presence coming out from him, and yet was able to be so warm and comforting to families at a time of loss, and also at a time of joy.
He was a man that was deeply involved in the lives of people, but not collectively. They were, each one was an individual, and he not only knew them, but he cared about them. That kind of personalizing of his rabbinate was an example to each of us of how to conduct our lives.
I had a birthday party for my husband's 65th birthday and invited folks, and our friends, most of them were from Temple. I did not invite Dr. Prinz because I felt it was, I don't want to use the word burden, but it's not fair to invite a person. And he's such a busy man, maybe he wants to be free. My husband and myself, that's what we thought, right or wrong, that's what we thought. We did not invite him. Lo and behold, in the middle of the evening, our bell rang. And there was Dr. Prinz and Hilda. I can't tell you how we felt.
You cannot be a rabbi unless you love people. You don't have to like them, but you have to love all of them. It says, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. It doesn't say, thou shalt like him. I have loved all the people with whom I came in contact, even those with whom I have disagreed, because I think that God wants us to love people.
I think he opened many people's eyes. Certainly his leadership in the civil rights movement, his bringing Martin Luther King to the congregation very early on. It was the first time I met Martin Luther King.
Prinz invited Martin Luther King to speak to his congregation.
This was something unusual or different to be doing, to bring a black minister to come and speak at the synagogue. I think that there were a lot of people who felt that he should be concentrating on Jewish issues, but my father felt that the civil rights movement was a Jewish issue.
His attitude was the purpose of a synagogue is to break down the walls of the sanctuary and to take the value system of this ancient tradition into the streets.
Rabbi Prinz, members of B'nai Abraham, religion is always in danger of saying God is going to change things, and so you wait on God to act. Well, I subscribe to another kind of religion, a religion that says God will act, but he will only act when men act. The God who says, stand on your feet and I will speak to you.
In 1961, the country elected a young president named John F. Kennedy. The following year, he proposed comprehensive civil rights legislation banning racial discrimination and giving the federal government enforcement powers.
Fires of frustration and discord are burning in every city. Where legal remedies are not at hand, redress is sought in the streets. We face, therefore, a moral crisis as a country and a people.
Civil rights leaders A. Philip Randolph and Bayard Rustin organized a march on Washington to demonstrate mass support for political and economic equality and to urge Congress to pass Kennedy's civil rights bill. They invited Prince to be one of the march leaders and to deliver an address.
Today's gathering is the largest in Washington's history. 200,000 people converge on the nation's capital to rally for civil rights. They come united in one cause, to urge Congress to pass a civil rights bill to end forever the blight of racial inequity.
It was a spectacular day in late August, but very, very hot.
We ask you to assemble in your respective groups now.
100,000 people coming here all at one time. Purpose is to coerce and intimidate and politically browbeat the Congress into passing bills that they would perhaps not otherwise pass.
They have more freedom here than in any country in the world. No one is deprived of freedom that I know about.
All the great white Christian majority of this country opposes this thing, and we feel that there must be somebody here on their behalf to show that we protest.
Big questions hung over this march on Washington. Would there be violence? The Negro leaders and the white leaders had said that they would take every means available to them to prevent any violence.
The top leaders of the movement are conferring on Capitol Hill with members of Congress, pointing up the aims of the rally. They are scheduled to move to the Lincoln Memorial at noon.
We went to the mall, and my father joined the speakers.
We begin the march for freedom now. Freedom, 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 freedom.
Leaders of the civil rights demonstration are now march to the Lincoln Memorial.
Man has led us afoot, you know he hung on Calvary. And I've got to thank him for how he brought me.
During the March on Washington, the spirit of history had tracked each and every one of us down to play a role, to do our part in bringing together all humankind.
Mahalia Jackson sang. She was, she brought down the house.
God been so good to me.
And my father was next.
I now have the pleasure to present to you Rabbi Joachim Prinz, President, American Jewish Congress. Rabbi Prinz.
The American Jewish Congress had drafted a speech for him, and he really wasn't happy with it. Nobody ever wrote speeches for him.
I wish I could sing.
He just got up in the middle of the night, and he basically rewrote that speech.
I speak to you as an American Jew. As Americans, we share the profound concern of millions of people about the shame and disgrace of inequality and injustice, which makes a mockery of the great American idea. As Jews, we bring to the great demonstrations in which thousands of us proudly participate
a twofold experience, one of the spirit and one of our history. In the realm of the spirit, our fathers taught us thousands of years ago that when God created man, he created him as everybody's neighbor. Neighbor is not a geographic term. It is a moral concept. It means our collective responsibility for the preservation of man's dignity and integrity. From our Jewish historic experience of 3,500 years, we say, our ancient history began with slavery and the yearning for freedom. It is not merely sympathy and compassion for the black people of America that motivates us. It is, above all, a sense of complete identification and solidarity born of our own painful historic experience. When I was the rabbi of the Jewish community in Berlin under the Hitler regime, I learned many things. The most important thing that I learned in my life, and under those tragic circumstances, is that bigotry and hatred are not the most urgent problems. The most urgent, the most disgraceful, the most shameful, and the most tragic problem is silence. A great people which had created a great civilization had become a nation of silent onlookers. They remained silent in the face of hate, in the face of brutality, and in the face of mass murder. America must not become a nation of onlookers. America must not remain silent, not merely black America, but all of America. It must speak up and act from the president down to the humblest of us, and not for the sake of the Negro, not for the sake of the black community, but for the sake of the image, the dream, the idea, and the aspiration of America itself. Our children, yours and mine, in every school across the land, every morning pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States and to the republic for which it stands. The time, I believe, has come to work together, for it is not enough to hope together, and it is not enough to pray together. To work together, that this children's oath will become a glorious, unshakable reality in a morally renewed and united America. Thank you.
I think it's very significant that for him, the great moment of his life was speaking at the March on Washington.
It brought him back to that time in Germany when he had addressed mass meetings, and he was able to be a leader in that fight.
I have the pleasure to present to you Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr.
I am happy to join with you today in what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation.
After the march, the leaders were invited to the White House. They met with President Kennedy to discuss the potential passage of the Civil Rights Bill.
The fact that President Kennedy welcomed the leaders of the March on Washington to the White House, it was symbolic and pivotal. And I think it changed the whole landscape of the civil rights movement from then on.
The hero of this day was the people who came from every part of the country, from every walk of life, and demonstrated that this to them was not merely an issue of politics, an issue of law, an issue of legislation, but beyond that, an issue of the personal commitment to the ideals of democracy. And it is for this reason that leaders of the Protestant Church, of the Roman Catholic Church, and I, as representative and president of the American Jewish Congress, came to join them and to make clear to the nation that what we are concerned with is the soul and the heart and the moral health of the nation.
I will always take pride in being in that photograph with those men, especially Rabbi Prinz, Martin Luther King Jr., and A. Philip Randolph.
That evening, the leaders were interviewed on television about their experience.
America has come into its own. America has found itself. There's something profoundly and fervently religious about it. We are no longer satisfied with mouthing religion and sermonizing. We are sick and tired of Sunday and Sabbath religion. We want religion for our daily living, and that cannot be done in the America of the 20th century without leading America into itself, into its own fulfillment.
We're going to stand together. We're going to sing together. We're going to stay together. We're going to moan together. We're going to groan together. That's the war. We say freedom, freedom, freedom.
Three months later, President Kennedy was assassinated. He would not live to see the passage of his Civil Rights Bill. President Johnson signed the bill into law in July of 1964. The same year, Martin Luther King was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize.
Martin Luther King understood that religion has never been a stranger to the issues of the world, and that the Hebrew prophets discussed matters of war and peace, of justice and equality as religious topics. I felt that it was wrong to talk about a revival of the Hebrew prophets by referring to some vague ethical principle without understanding that the prophets always translated these principles into political activities. In Martin Luther King, I found a kindred soul.
Dr. Prinz and I were of like mind on many issues. Certainly the civil rights movement, certainly the growth and development of Israel, what it could become, in another sense of America too, what it could become. we went to the March on Washington together, and I was arrested with Dr. Prinz. We went to jail for picketing at the Jordan Pavilion of the New York World's Fair, in which pavilion an anti-Semitic mural had been placed by the Jordanian government. And Dr. Prinz called me one evening and said, "Would you like to go and distribute leaflets at the Jordan Pavilion tomorrow?" I said, of course I would come. And then he said, sort of as an addendum, "We may be arrested." I said, well, that's okay.
Going to the Jordanian. We shall go into the Jordanian Pavilion.
When you get
going into
picket
there.
When you get to the
Outside.
Jordanian Pavilion, what will you do? Picket without
We
placards?
shall picket without placards, yes.
Yes. What do you intend to do in the way of demonstrating there besides walking up and
We will
down?
give out leaflets. We will give out leaflets and make the people understand that what is stated on the mural is a misstatement of fact
And what is
and
that?
an insult to the Jewish people as well as to Israel.
Prinz and fellow American Jewish Congress leaders were arrested when they picketed a pavilion at the 1964 World's Fair for its anti-Israel propaganda.
Have you a written permit?
No, we do not.
Did you apply for a permit?
We did.
Was it denied?
It was.
And you are now here in violation of World Fair regulations known to you in its detention.
In exercise of our constitutional rights to do so, we shall picket now.
I was a young man when I started getting arrested, and he was not a young man, for crying out loud, you know. As far as I was concerned, he just kept going up in my elevation. I absolutely loved him.
Prinz had embraced the dream of a Jewish state since his teenage years in Germany. After the State of Israel was established in 1948, Prinz became a devoted and honest friend to the nation.
Israel did not come into being because of political machinations. It was created because Hitler destroyed 6 million of our people, that it is internationally guaranteed since 1947 by the United Nations. Israel has absorbed 750,000 Hitler refugees and hundreds of thousands of refugees from Arab countries. It is the symbol of the conscience of the world.
The tension in the Middle East over the Gulf of Aqaba blockade develops into full-scale war. Our State Department says we are neutral in word, thought, and deed.
In 1967, when the Arab states and Israel went to war, Prinz spoke out, urging the United States to remain a strong ally of the Jewish state.
I think that most Americans were shocked at the statement of the State Department. We're very glad that the White House corrected it to say on behalf of the American people, after what has been said by its own president, that we will be neutral in thought, deed, and words. Is something so outrageous. I do not hope that the American people are neutral in thought.
War in the Middle East. Israeli forces drive spearheads across the Sinai Peninsula, west to the Suez Canal, south to the entrance of the Gulf of Aqaba, breaking the blockade, capturing the west bank of the Jordan River, and occupying the old city of Jerusalem.
As a result of the Six-Day War, Israel gained control of the Egyptian Sinai, the Syrian Golan, the Jordanian West Bank, and Arab Jerusalem.
I remember that he went to Israel shortly after the Six-Day War because he wanted to see the territories, because in his mind, this was going to be something temporary. He wanted to go see them while he was able to see them.
After the war, Prinz privately urged Israeli leaders to exchange land for peace and to resolve their differences with the Palestinians.
My father was always someone who had a great sense of history and who understood very clearly that despite the fact that Arab states had attacked Israel once it was founded, that the Palestinians who were in Israel, who lived in Israel, had been there and for generations, and that they had also a claim on that land, certainly on their homes.
For a war cannot be successful, for in the end, a war will prove to be destructive, not merely to the defeated nation, to the vanquished, but also to the victors.
After another war divided the Middle East in 1973, Prinz spoke out publicly for reconciliation and peace. He opposed Israel's practice of building settlements on land gained in war.
The only sane course on which Israel and her neighbors can now embark is that of establishing permanent peace in the entire region. For the sake of world peace, there must be peace in the Middle East, where peace was once proclaimed as the basis of the religions created there.
He became a very early advocate of Shalom Achshav, peace now. He was someone who preached about it, who spoke about it, and it didn't win him a lot of friends.
Rabbi Prinz did what he thought was right. And sometimes what he thought was right was not yet popular. That's the nature of people who are ahead of their times.
Prinz went where his conscience directed him. He believed very strongly in the importance of Jewish identity and of the Jewish people, and that the Jewish people had a message for humanity.
Rabbi Prinz must be remembered as one of those courageous souls that were picked up and lifted by his own conscience, but also by the spirit of history.
We stand in a structure that is us. It's a reflection of who we are as a people. It's a reflection of our history. It's a reflection of the continuity of the spirit of America.
This building throughout its history has neither been a synagogue nor a church, but rather a synagogue and a church.
This is a civil rights landmark, and so the temple is not just the home of two congregations in my mind, but it's important to the civil rights movement and to the history and the continuity of who we are as a country. And I think that's why they gave our building national significance.
In this building, which holds the echoes of heroes, of Martin Luther King, of Rabbi Prinz, of so many people who believed not just in the people in front of them in their congregation, but believed in a spirit that was so much larger, so much grander than they themselves were as individuals. This is a time we need to hear the echoes of history, to hear the voices of people like Martin Luther King or Rabbi Prinz, and hear what they called for us to be.
On that August day in 1963, he joined Dr. King at the March on Washington. This is what Rabbi Prinz said to the crowd. In the realm of the Spirit, our fathers taught us
thousands of years ago that when God created man, he created him as everybody's neighbor. Neighbor is not a geographic term. It is a moral concept. It means our collective responsibility for the preservation of man's dignity and integrity.